What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to once again talk to you about today with this upcoming snowstorm that is currently moving into the United States. It's starting off as its Alberta Clipper type of system, and then it's going to be moving into the Midwest. And I have been seeing some more of the models, and it looks like the majority of the snow track has actually shifted further to the south, which is actually very bad news, especially for areas in Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia that just got all that massive flash flooding. Now you're going to get even more snow than what we were originally anticipating on top of that, and that's something we absolutely do not want to see for you guys down there. We also have that, as well as the update on what's going to be happening in the Mid-Atlantic. That southward shift has also put a lot of New England out of the line of fire, which is generally good news. But that also puts parts of North Carolina and Virginia in the line of fire, in the jackpot. I know my friend Matt, his brother Evan, he goes to college in Southern Virginia, around near the Richmond area, so he's going to definitely be getting a lot of snow from this. But by and large, we have a lot to talk about. These shifts have continued, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, here's our storm code today for Storms United. Shout out to John, our head admin, for making this right here. Here's what we have going on. We have a hatched code orange and a hatched code yellow. The hatched code orange is for areas that are in the winter storm warning, and yes, that does need to be extended because the more winter storm warnings have been issued. And the hatched code yellow is for areas that are currently under a winter storm watch and are expecting some pretty powerful impacts. We still have our code yellows for mountain snow in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado, as well as for this Alberta Clipper type system that's going to morph and transform more than a transformer normally would. Sorry, that was a bad joke, but yeah, we got our code yellow over here in Nebraska, South Dakota, Missouri, those areas. And we have code yellows mainly for lake effect around Traverse City, Michigan, and in the Upper Peninsula. And we also have a hatched code yellow for parts of West Virginia because of the Appalachian snow, and a general code yellow for all the snow that's going on over there that has generally moved out. That's going to need to be updated, and a code orange for lake effect, which we will also talk about in today's video. So that's what we have going on right now. Let's go ahead and start with the National Weather Service right here with their latest updates. We have winter storm warnings, and we have extreme cold warnings across much of the central United States, because right after this and while this is going on, in fact, it's actually it was actually the negatives this morning where I'm at. Ultimately, we're seeing some extreme cold temperatures that are going to be joining this system right here, and that's going to be some very bad news, because not only is that going to make things even worse, especially if you lose power, but it's ultimately going to help increase the pressure gradient, and that could lead to some isolated blizzard conditions. So we're going to have to see how this pans out, but let's go ahead and go to the main meat right here and give you a general gist as to what we are seeing right here. This is what we have out here in the NWS office in Springfield, Missouri. Here's our winter storm warning. Let's go ahead and move this over, and let's go ahead and move. Actually, that's a little too far. Now let's go ahead and move this over so that way we can go ahead and read it for you guys. Here's what we're expecting. Between 6 to 10 inches for most of the area in the Springfield area, with locally higher amounts up to 14 inches in a few locations where some snow bands develop. And I personally think we could see up to maybe some isolated areas of up to 18 inches of snow, depending on how the system develops and how much moisture comes in from the Gulf. And here's what we have. Visibilities will drop to below 1/4 of a mile due to falling and blowing snow. Wind gusts will peak around 20 to 30 miles per hour, so that's why they haven't issued the blizzard warnings yet. They're not expecting anything over 35 miles per hour for 3 hours, so we're going to have to see how this ultimately pans out. But that's our first winter storm warning right here. We also have one further to the west in Kansas, as well as eastern Kansas and northeastern Oklahoma. We'll go ahead and start with the one in eastern Kansas. 5 and 8 inches of snow is expected. Roads, especially bridges and overpasses, will likely become slick and hazardous. Travel could be very difficult. If you are in any of these winter storm warnings with this type of system organizing and developing, do not travel. I strongly recommend against it, and I would continue to watch this very closely. NWS St. Louis has issued winter storm warnings for areas south in their WFO. They haven't issued anything yet for the metro area, but it's likely they will either issue a borderline winter storm warning or a winter weather advisory, as the models have continued to shift further to the south and bring the majority of the snow to areas in Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. 6 to 10 inches of snow is expected for that portion if you are in Farmington, Cape Girardeau, Rolla, those areas right there. Winter storm watch remains in effect, between 3 and 8 inches possible. There's going to be a lot of gray area because of that snow gradient. I've been watching the models, so we'll have to see how this pans out. But I do think that's more likely than not you're going to see a winter storm warning in those parts of St. Louis in the metro area than a winter weather advisory, just because they want to err on the side of caution and just in case the system overperforms or not, which it very much might. So that's what we have going on right there. We also have winter storm watches, and as well as flood warnings in much of Kentucky right here. And then adding a lot of snow on top of that is absolutely going to be disastrous right here. What are we looking at? 2 and 6 inches possible. For that part of Kentucky, 2 and 6 inches is not very good. And I know they had that massive snowstorm last month, which kind of gave them a taste of what's going on. But you also have to consider that there's a lot of flooding associated with this now. And that flooding, as well as the snow on top of it, are going to make things even worse in that part of the region. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the models that we have for you right here. We're going to go ahead and start with some of the short range runs that we have, and we're going to mainly focus on the Midwest since that's what we have going on so far. There have not been, to my knowledge at this current point, winter storm watches issued for parts of Virginia just yet. There's still a little bit of uncertainty, and there is still time to look at that and evaluate the situation. I will continue to keep you updated on that, but here's what we have going on with the HRRR run. This is the 12Z that we have pulled up for you right here. The HRRR is going to be pretty interesting, and how this originally starts, like I mentioned in yesterday's video and earlier in this video, it's going to start off as kind of your Alberta Clipper type system, and then as time continues to go on, it's going to morph into a bit of a Colorado low. You're going to have this low pressure system develop off the lee of the Colorado Rockies, and then it's going to dive further to the south and bring in more moisture from the Gulf up to much of the Midwest as the system starts to bring impacts to that region. Then you have snow starting to develop on the Ozark Plateau right there. That's where the line of fire is. That's the area I am most concerned about because typically the Ozark Plateau does not see this much snow. It's usually variably, it's usually ice storms and maybe like a couple inches of snow typically, but up to 14 inches of snow or even isolated areas of 18 inches based on what I'm taking a look at from some of these runs, as well as kind of looking at some observations as well. It's essentially something we're going to have to pay attention to, and the HRRR does have this track much further to the south compared to what we were seeing previously. For example, let's go ahead and move over here. The HRRR actually now has areas in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama getting snowfall from this. Now, granted, it's not going to likely be that much, but the southward shift is there, and that puts more of Kentucky, Tennessee, and even North Carolina in the line of the bullseye right here. And maybe it's not going to be that much right away, but we're going to have to see how this whole system pans out. And remember, Tennessee, like 3 inches of snow, they don't have the infrastructure down there to really get the snow cleaned out. They don't really have that many snow plows. And I know they had a system last month moved through there, but Tennessee drivers can't drive in snow for the life of them. So that's what we have with the HRRR. Wraps coming out right now. This is the 15Z wrap. 15Z wrap is pretty interesting, I will say the very least. Right here, compared to that to the 9Z, it looks like there is a slight southward shift. Not very much, but a slight shift. And looking at the 9Z wrap, it moves through real quickly and it really develops into that Colorado low, as I was talking about with you right here. We can go ahead and show that our countrywide view of it. Alberta Clipper at first, then Colorado low, and then it moves through much of the Midwest and the Upper South. The wrap also wants Alabama and Georgia to get very heavy snow from this, and we're going to have to pay attention to this because now they're in the line of fire, and that's something I am very concerned about, to say the very least. And I know I keep saying that to say the very least over and over again, but I'll definitely do my best to control that. Here's the NAM that we have for you. This is the model that we have been using generally for more of the mid-range runs. right here, and we can go ahead and show you that again. The NAM has the system moving through. It actually gives more of Oklahoma snowfall compared to what we were seeing in previous runs because of that southward shift, and that's also going to drive in more moisture from the Gulf and later the southwestern Atlantic Ocean over here, and then it's going to be moving through Kentucky, Tennessee, extreme North Mississippi, Alabama. The rest of the areas in the south are likely going to see rain. I've watched the severe threat. This is going to be a non-severe type of situation. I can go ahead and show you that as well. I mean, there is a marginal risk just in case for parts of Texas and Louisiana right there, but there's not going to be really much severe weather that goes with this, so I want to make that explicitly clear. And then you have the NAM that really wants things to get pretty dicey over here in the mid-Atlantic. First of all, it wants to give a lot of North Carolina freezing rain, especially areas around the Wilmington area, more inland. So Connor, if you're watching this, it's likely you're not going to see any freezing rain from this. It's mainly going to stay inland of that, but you might want to pay attention if you're in areas like Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, those areas right there, Asheville as well, because they're still recovering from Hurricane Helene. And then the NAM has the system moving further to the north. It brings Virginia a lot of snow, especially central and southern Virginia, and Virginia Beach could see a lot of snow from this as well, but it ultimately stays out to sea, and it doesn't put New England in as much of the line of fire right here as what we were seeing in previous runs a couple of days ago. But if you're in Delaware and southern New Jersey, you definitely could see some snow from this, and this is something you're going to want to continue to keep an eye on as this system evolves and as this system develops. So that's what we have with the NAM. Let's go ahead now and show you the GEM RDPS right here. I know the GEM models are a bit hairy. I will say I don't really like how they initialize. I think they overestimate the cold. They can sometimes overestimate the snow and how far down it goes. But ultimately, the GEM RDPS has a similar setup right here, puts Kentucky and Tennessee in the line of fire, and then you have a secondary low developing in the southwestern Atlantic, puts a lot more of North Carolina in the line of fire for snow, and southern Virginia right here, and then you have another interesting system right here moving through with a little bit of snow. I think that's kind of curious to say the very least. And then ultimately, they stays out to sea and keeps New England out of the line of fire. Here's what we have with the GEM GDPS right here. This is our long-range forecast right here. The GEM GDPS has the system moving through once again, puts Kentucky and Tennessee in the line of fire, but it stays generally out of the south right there. And then it moves out to sea after bringing a couple of inches to Virginia. And then by and large after that, there's a few systems we're going to want to pay attention to, but it is going to be relatively quiet unless this scenario plays out where we see a really powerful nor'easter next week on the 25th. But granted, this is a week out. Nothing is set in stone just yet. And actually, I want to go ahead, now that you mention it, I want to check to see if there's any consistency with this, because if there is consistency with it, that's when it becomes a problem. Okay, there is a little bit of consistency with this, but where the consistency kind of stops is how far to the west it goes. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 12Z right here. Yeah, that's where the consistency stops, of how far north and west it goes. But ultimately, it is saying, hey, something's going to be happening. You might want to pay attention to that. And that's going to be a video for another day right there. But right now, my main focus is this original snowstorm that we're looking at. The European, we don't really have that much with precip type or anything like that, so we'll have to skip that. Here's what we have with the GFS going for you right here. Now, the GFS really has been pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and pull up the 12Z. It's actually coming out right now. The 12Z GFS has this system continuing to shift further to the south, puts more of Mississippi and Alabama in the line of fire. I actually would not be surprised if they issue winter weather advisories down there. I would not be surprised if the NWS issues, they actually already have issued winter storm warnings for parts of Tennessee over here. I didn't even take a look at this. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek and a quick gander. 3 to 5 inches of snow expected. So that's what we have going on in that part of the country right there. So here's what we have going on afterward. Then the GFS has the system moving into Virginia, Delaware, parts of Maryland, merges into a bit of a nor'easter, but by and large stays out to sea. And if you're in New England, you're mainly going to be out of the line of fire. So that is some good news compared to what we have seen in days previous. But we're still going to have to pay very close attention to it, especially and watch how the system evolves, because sometimes these things are unpredictable. Sometimes the Colorado low can develop a bit further up to the north than possible, sometimes a bit further to the south. But by and large, if you're in the Ozark Plateau, if you are in southern Missouri, if you are in Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, southern Illinois, especially southern Illinois, for my folks in Storms United who are watching this video, you're going to want to take this very, very seriously because that southward shift puts you guys more in the line of fire. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at total snow accumulations. From this, we're going to start with the HRRR and mainly focus on the Midwest right here. It's not fully out just yet, but from what we can gather from this system, yeah, it puts Carbondale, it puts Cairo, it puts a lot of extreme southern Illinois more in the line of fire. If you're in the Ozark Plateau, you could see up to 15 inches of snow according to the HRRR. And keep in mind, this system's still going right here, so we still have a lot left to go. 4-2. The wrap's been pretty interesting, up to 18 inches of snow in the Ozark Plateau. Generally keeps it a little bit less in around the St. Louis area, so we'll have to watch and see how that pans out. Here's the 15Z right here. The 15Z, interestingly enough, compared to what we were seeing with the 9Z, actually shifts it a little bit further to the north, at least in terms of snow totals right here. So we'll have to see how that pans out and see how this essentially evolves. But if it does shift a bit more to the north, I would be more concerned for areas like St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, those areas right there. And then you have this system moving through. You're looking at potentially up to a foot of snow if you're in southern Illinois, up to 18 inches if you are in the Ozark Plateau. Here's what we have with the NAM right here. The NAM, we can go a little bit further out. The NAM has it a bit more concentrated, but you're still seeing 15 plus inches of snow in the Ozark Plateau, as well as like up to 10 inches in areas like Carbondale. St. Louis, you could see an isolated area of 6 inches or so. I personally think they should issue a winter storm warning just to be on the side of caution for the St. Louis metro area, but that's just my opinion. I'm not the NWS. Go to them for further information. And then if we go ahead and shift over to the mid-Atlantic right here, look at this. This whole blob right here, that's Virginia and parts of North Carolina. It's in completely the line of fire. Richmond could see 8 inches of snow. Virginia Beach could see 10 inches of snow. That is pretty interesting, to say the very least. Normally, Virginia Beach is an area where you're typically south of that rain-snow line. Not in this case, ladies and gentlemen. Not in this case. So that's what we have going on over there. DC is going to mainly stay out of the line of fire. Matt, I'm sorry. Yeah, and so is New England as well. Here's what we have, the GEM RDPS. Okay, yeah, that's a bit broken with the snow accumulation. Here's the GEM GDPS we have for you right here. GEM GDPS is pretty interesting. Watch the lake effect over here. You're seeing a lot of lake effect potentially off the coast of Lake Erie over here in Lake Ontario. You're going to want to watch that. But here's what we have the GEM GDPS. It actually shifts further to the south. It does give St. Louis more snow, about 5 to 6 inches, but it wants Arkansas to get over a foot of snow. I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to shift that far to the south, but if it does, that's going to be a problem because take a look at what we're seeing in Kentucky and Tennessee right here. Potentially over 8 inches of snow, at least 6 in parts of the Paducah WFO as well. Right there, excuse me. Here's what we have near Memphis, 6 inches of snow. That's going to be a massive issue. And now taking a look at the European right here. The European's pretty interesting. Has the snow concentrated around the Ozark Plateau, around maxing out about 12 inches of snow or so. But look at what's going on in the Mid-Atlantic. It wants parts of North Carolina and Virginia Beach to get over a foot of snow. I'm going to be honest, I don't see that exact scenario happening. I don't see it being that concentrated right there. I think it's going to be more spread out. It's going to encompass more of Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and I also think it's going to stay out of North Carolina. These foot of snow totals are going to stay out of North Carolina unless we see a dramatic shift in the initialization to the south. And this is what we have the GFS, and this is a more realistic scenario, for example, right here, giving Boston 2.5 inches, giving lots of Virginia, especially around the Hampton Roads area, over a foot of snow, and you have parts of Virginia, New Jersey, and those areas over there getting over 3 inches of snow. If you go ahead and shift back to the Midwest, the GFS still wants 18 inches of snow for parts of the Ozark Plateau, Joplin, Springfield, those areas right there. Could definitely see that. So this is all stuff we're going to have to watch. And the GFS also still wants to give St. Louis up to 8 inches of snow from this. It's on the more aggressive side in the St. Louis metro. And that's why I want the winter storm warning instead of the winter weather advisory for that area. But hey, I'm not the National Weather Service. They know better than me. So stay tuned for them for more updates, and I'll update you on the snow totals here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. And with that being said, we're closing the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to hang out with us at Storms Unite or ask us questions, be sure to join our Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. Also, shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to support the channel more directly, as well as the documentaries and other projects I am working on, be sure to join the Pat's Path Predictor Patreon. It's the first link in the description down below. That being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.